97.1.
Do that again, 97.1?
97.1.
And do a clap.
97.1.
No, more of a, so we can...
97.1.
Perfect.
So, we're usually shooting at Lance's place, but we're in my neck of the woods, so we're here in my attic fortress of solitude, except it can't really be my fortress of solitude because I've never beaten off in here. I don't think it can be a fortress of solitude unless you've beaten off in it. Which leads to the question, which superheroes beat off?
No idea.
Well, all right,
let's start
with the actual owner of the Fortress of Solitude, Superman, and then Superman was created in 1938, I think, along with Batman. 39, I guess it's his 80th anniversary, but both those guys were created before, beating off was part of the cultural life of America. It wasn't, it was seldom mentioned, though the Boy Scout handbook had a paragraph about how it was not the best thing for you to do. So I don't think beating off is not part of their sphere of activity. But Spider-Man, created in 1964, high school kid, nerdy, lovelorn, definitely a lot of beating off. Fantastic Four beating off. Captain America, before he was turned into Captain America, when he was spindly. Certainly. So Wonder Woman, no beating off. I guess I would say that DC comic characters beat off a lot less than Marvel characters.
I just think that if Wonder Woman beat off, I'd like to see it. They should feature that.
Look, I mean, she comes from an island where no men and perfect fulfillment, well balanced, like a utopian kind of classical Greek Roman life, except no dudes. So
well, then you could be sure that there's going to be some.
Well, there's hooking up, but there's anyway. Nobody you want to talk like the Hulk doesn't beat off when he's the Hulk because it's too he can't figure out how to do it. When he's Bruce Banner, yeah, beats off. He's just.
You'd think that if you were a superhero, you could probably get a date.
Yeah, but that leads to a general principle that no matter, unless you're a psychopath like Harvey Weinstein or some Cosby, and I'm sure Cosby beat off a lot, and probably Weinstein too, but unless you're fantastically lucky and you're married to a woman who's not only abnormally, ridiculously horny, but also makes you horny even after 30 years, almost everybody is going to be is going to have more orgasms from beating off over the course of their adult life than from sex with somebody else. No matter how cool they are, no matter if they're Ryan Reynolds or Ryan Gosling, it's just, and I think that some guys probably put themselves in trouble because they just can't see, it just doesn't feel right that a guy as cool as they are should be beating off. For instance, and I'm betraying my liberal side by picturing Bill Clinton having all sorts of sexual misbehavior and misadventures, with probably part of the self-talk, the self-justification in his head being, I'm a powerful guy. I'm the governor of Arkansas, and later I'm the president of the U.S. And if I want to, get some nookie, then I should be able to. It's a dangerous and unreasonable kind of expectation that you're going to be able to get sex whenever you want.
Well, this may be a naive question. By the way, I'd like to just point out to the camera that this was a surprise issue for
me too. I didn't
know we were going to discuss this.
But I didn't know till it came out of my mouth.
But my question is, if you are in a relationship with a woman, I guess there's a lot of people out there much more sophisticated than I am, but don't you kind of, do you need to beat off when you're in a relationship with a woman?
Well, there are some people who are fantastically disciplined. Directors saying, don't talk about this stuff.
It's not going anywhere. All right.
All right, so...
I'd like to talk about my topic, if that's okay.
Okay, fine.
Just before we were about to get something really revealing from Rick. So I was challenged a few weeks ago to, because every time I listen to NPR, I find out that they're brainwashing the liberals. And happened again. I just happened to listen to, I was challenged by Rick to have a weekly thing about it. I turned on NPR, and they were talking about boycotting Israel. Now, just to recap, for those of you that don't know, Israel is a tiny country. And if the United States boycotted Israel, they could destroy it. If the whole world boycotted Israel, it wouldn't be like North Korea. The country would collapse. So when people talk about boycotting Israel, they're basically talking about destroying it. So I'm listening to NPR.
Well, who's saying we should boycott Israel?
Well, the Democrats, two of the members of Congress, the new Islamic members, and I believe that your hero Cortez is open to it. There's talk about, but moreover, okay, I don't know precisely the position of every Democrat, okay, but I do know that the universities, a lot of Democrat-run institutions, businesses, are trying to boycott Israel. They're part of the BDS movement, Boycott, Divest, and Sanction movement. And what NPR starts off is they say, yeah, let's talk to some people that are in favor of boycotting. And they go and they find this innocent Palestinian man, and he says, yes, it is a peaceful alternative. It is a way of protesting, but without hurting anybody. It's just economic. And as a result, I thought, why can't we grow our own mushrooms in Palestine? Why do we have to import them from Israel? So I'm going to grow my own mushrooms. And they brought the NPR woman in, who's this little SJW, social justice warrior, and she's
just a reporter,
and she's on the radio. No, you can tell by her whole demeanor. And she goes in and she says, so why did you decide to boycott Israel? Well, the Israelis were very cruel. They beat up my family. And she says, oh, that's too bad. I mean, does it make you feel bad when the Israelis beat up your family? Oh, yes, it does. It's very bad when they do that. And where is this farm? Oh, it's right here. Look, I'm growing mushrooms. And she comes in and says, wow, those are such beautiful mushrooms. I would love to put those maybe in a salad or something. And then they cut to the Israeli, because they want to be balanced. So, Israeli, what are you thinking about this boycott movement? Well, I'm against it. Okay, fine. Now let's get back. Now it turns out those Israelis shut down your farm, didn't they? Yes, they did. They would not let me get fertilizer. Huh. Well, now why would those bad old Israelis do that?
Because you make explosives out of fertilizer.
Well, they said that you could make explosives out of explosives. And the NPR lady says, well, some people think you can make explosives. And then they go, okay, so we ended at that. And then they say, we asked the Israeli government, why did you take this fertilizer from this poor man? And we did not get a response. Then they go to, you took a long time, so I'm going to flesh this out. Then they go to...
So we get the point.
I've got another point. So then they go to the Senate. And it turns out that that it all started because Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican, wanted to pass a law that you can't, that the United States should not do business with anybody that is boycotting Israel, with a business that's boycotting Israel. And they said Senator Rubio didn't want to speak. And then they talked for like 10 minutes with some lawyer that is totally in support of the boycott and why it's part of the First Amendment, or law. The government shall not pass a law, and he's going into all these things. And they say, and we asked Senator Rubio, and they didn't comment. So you only get the pro-BDS lawyers' view, but they're not done. Then they say, well, how did boycotting start to begin with? Well, we're going to tell you a little story about the very first boycott. And they describe horrifying conditions in Ireland in the 1870s. And they say, these poor Irish people, the English took their land, and they were charging them a lot of money, and the Irish were starving, and they rather than fight, they found this peaceful alternative. And they boycotted the English, and they won. And they got their land back. And then they ended it with this really charming thing. They were asking a descendant of the Irish. They said to her, so what do you think of boycotts? Would you ever boycott? And she said, well, I suppose if somebody came to my country and took my land and took me home, well, I'd have to do the right thing. It would be a peaceful way of fighting for what's right. And that is how NPR brainwashes Democrats. And the typical Democrat listening to this is just going, yeah, boycotting Israel is a very good idea. It worked in the past, and it's legal, and why shouldn't Palestinians have mushrooms? So what I'm saying is this.
So in this whole report that you just reiterated, did they ever say why? Because, I mean, at some point they must have said, because Israel's being mean to Palestine or something?
Well, this is what they do. This is why I hate the media.
They have to give the reason for the boycott.
No, well, I missed the first minute or two, but you get the idea because, poor Muhammad, his family was beaten up. And by Israeli soldiers who came and beat up his family. And so he wants to grow his own mushrooms. Why should we let family beaters have a good economy? So everything's implied. This is why I hate your media. Because now I see what they're doing. Their new mission is to get Americans, whoever listens to NPR, who doesn't know they're being brainwashed, to hate Israel and boycott Israel. That's their new thing. And I think they're doing this preemptively because some of the Democrat candidates are going to be pro-boycott. They're not going to separate themselves. They're not going to speak out against it. So the plan is, by the time the Democrats actually come out and say, yeah, we want to boycott Israel, the Democrat base listening to NPR will be ready for it.
Okay, let me respond.
And the point I'm trying to make is, what's wrong is they don't just say all what I just said. What's wrong is they do it subtly. They tell you these stories. They tell you these stories, and at the end of the story, if you're a reasonable person, you'll want to boycott Israel too. Instead of just doing what the Republicans do on Fox and saying, we're for Israel, we think boycotting is wrong, or if they thought it was right, they just tell you. They say, this is what we think. This isn't the news. This is our opinion, and here's why.
All right, let me tell you what I think. And you can tell me where I'm wrong or whatever, but I think Israel-Palestine, I can talk, I mean, there are a lot of reasons. There's a huge history, but largely intractable problem. And maybe this makes me a bad guy for not giving that much of a shit about it compared to about Israel versus the Palestinians. Yeah, okay, I'm a semi-bad person because I don't give that much of a shit about it. The Palestinians, the Palestinians do a lot of bad shit. The Palestinians are in more desperate straits on average than the Israelis. But the Palestinians have also been fucked over by their own leadership, which I've said a bunch of times. You like to attribute political agendas to what you consider the liberal news. I've worked, not in news, but news adjacent. I've worked on, for almost 12 years, I worked on a show that had to turn out an hour's worth of material every 4 days a week. And part of it is, one reason you get bad journalism is because you have to fill every fucking hour of the day on a 24-hour news channel. Now you can throw on other, like MSNBC and CNN, throw on like Dateline 2020, the case of the schoolmarm murder and shit like that. But you've got to put up, more than 100 hours worth of material every week. And some of it might be agenda-driven, but some of it's profit-driven, and some of it is just driven by a desperation to come up with stories. So I don't know what percent of the drive to feature the guy who is growing mushrooms, because I heard another feature on a guy who's trying to farm, and who's probably the same guy in Palestine. And to some extent, the guy is a two-headed pig. It's a guy who's trying, there's a political angle on it, but it's also a guy who's barely interesting enough to do some news on. Shitty news, shitty journalism. When you look, I'm reasonably well informed, and when I think about boycotting that was actually effective, I think about South Africa in the 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
The whole world kind of boycotted South Africa because South Africa still had apartheid.
Yeah, and
right?
I'm going to be talking loud because we're having trouble with our microphone.
All right, but hold on. So apartheid was a loathsome system where Whitey, as far as I know, being semi-well-informed, Whitey was just squashing the coloreds and the blacks, and for no justifiable reason. And that, and it feels like that boycott was justified. I don't think boycotting Israel is anything, I don't think that is justified. That Israel's caught in this, I don't know if it's permanently intractable, I guess that's what intractable means, but it's a situation that's gone on for, Israel became a nation in 1948, but it was going on for hundreds of years before that. And I don't know, I think that most reasonable people are going to be like, even if you credit, attempts to brainwash America, I don't think people are going to be down for boycotting Israel for the, there might be the 3% Jill Stein contingent, the anti-vax kind of, the liberals who manage to always pick up the stupidest ideas under the liberal umbrella. Maybe some of them will go for it, but I think it'll be a very small percentage.
Well, you've said a lot of things. The first thing you said was that it was mere coincidence that they did this show about this.
Let me further explain. Like what I found out, I used to try to get on talk shows like Geraldo. I was on Geraldo twice, and I was on a show called Morton Downey. And I found out that if you call up, back then you called them because there was no computers and there weren't any emails back then. You'd call them up, or you'd actually write them a letter and put it in the mail. And you go, I should be on your show, and here's what the theme of the show should be. And that letter or that phone call is received by a producer who's desperate because that producer has been working there for 3 years and ran out of new ideas 2.5 years ago. So if you present them with a fairly fleshed out idea, they make a show out of it. And to some extent, that's the deal. Okay, there's a Palestinian guy who's growing mushrooms. And certainly there's a political dimension to it. But it's also a human interest story because here's this little downtrodden guy. I know you can't divide the political from the human interest, but to some extent, it's exciting to a news producer because it'll fill air with a story. Now, Fox could take a look at that guy too, and they could debunk the whole deal and say, the guy once says he can't grow mushrooms without fertilizer, and they took away the fertilizer. And then Fox could go, you know what fertilizer did? It blew the top off the Edward J. Murrah building and killed 169 people with the, what's his name?
Timothy McVeigh.
With the Timothy McVeigh bombing. So when somebody complains about poor pitiful me, I mean, frickin'...
Well, why do you suppose that NPR took this approach?
Well,
why didn't they say what you just said?
Well, you like to attribute it to an agenda. And certainly to some extent, that's the deal. But here's the, like, you know the skit on well, okay, so, you know, the people on NPR are more likely to be social. Hold on, listen. No, we got to keep going because we don't edit planes out. We're over the flight path, so a plane's going to go over every 8 minutes or so. So yeah, NPR people are more likely to be in the social justice warrior persuasion than people on Fox.
So they're using their show to convince people to divest and boycott Israel.
Not really. No, it's.
You're sure of that?
No, but I'm saying it's a small part, if any.
Small part. They've got their choice of anything they could do. They decided they're going to do an exhaustive examination.
Look how cute this fucking dog is. This is a cute-ass dog. A
Social
justice warrior is going to see a cute little fucking Palestinian trying to grow mushrooms and is going to be struck in his or her social justice warrior center with warmth and empathy.
Why aren't they showing warmth and empathy to the Jews that are getting their kids blown up?
Well, I heard reporting on NPR about the
why is it even-handed? It's like, let's see, this guy wants to import tons of fertilizer that can be made into explosives. We'll be even-handed with him, and then we'll be fair to the people, the Jews, that are getting their heads blown off.
Well, yeah,
so
right.
they can't figure out which side to take on that. It's a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And Rick can't decide either. Rick's going, it's just a mere coincidence. A cute little
It's
dog.
not a coincidence.
Yeah,
it's the way news works.
It's the way news works.
Well,
so news is written in such a way to get people to want to destroy Israel. That's just a coincidence.
Who wants to destroy Israel on the basis of a fucking mushroom story?
Well, that's the whole point, Rick. They start off with this cute little Palestinian
Well, if you want to talk,
farm,
then you don't want to get into a slippery slope argument with me, because then we have to bring in everything fucking Trump is.
Rick. They were trying to justify boycotting Israel. You haven't even heard the report.
Yeah, well, you just described...
Okay, so boycotting Israel should be a fun thing. There's mushrooms involved, there's a Palestinian guy, there's some Irish people. It's just a fun thing. They could have talked about nude ping pong, but they'll talk about boycotting Israel and why it's justified. You think that's a coincidence?
To some extent.
To some extent. Okay, the other thing I noticed that you said was that, reasonable people, Democrats, they're not going to be for boycotting Israel. Well, it turns out that statistically, most Democrats believe that the Palestinians are correct in the Middle East problems today.
What does that mean? What's the survey question? What is that?
The question is, which side is right in the Middle East now? I don't know the precise wording of the question, but basically, are you on the side of the Palestinians or the Israelis?
Well, we should look it up because the wording of the question.
Most average Democrat today are against Israel now in this conflict, and most Republicans, of the vast majority, the lion's share majority, are on the side of Israel. So your party is anti-Israel.
When we break, we'll look up the poll and we'll see exactly what it says.
Well, let's look it up right now.
Okay.
But let me just ask you a question. Is it too incredible for you to believe that what I'm saying is true? That a poll was taken that more Democrats support Palestine than Republicans? Is that just incomprehensible?
Oh, no. I totally believe that more Democrats take the side of Palestine than do Republicans.
Thank you. So my point is this. I don't want to have to spend a half an hour in the middle of the night finding exactly this poll.
Well,
if you think I'm lying...
You just said... You didn't say that. You at first said that more Democrats support Palestine than support Israel.
Yes.
And I have a hard time believing that.
They are in the conflict. They believe that Palestine is more correct, more right than Israel.
Well, then we got to see the actual poll. But let's talk about.
But I mean, my question is, can't you just believe me? Do we have to waste a half an hour looking this up?
It won't be half an hour, but yeah, I can't just believe you.
Okay, you can't just believe me because I lie a lot about this.
No, but because the specifics of the question. Because I bet you. No, wait. I bet you. Here's what I bet. I bet you. I bet you Ida No scores like at least 20%.
Well, Rick, is it my imagination that none of the Democrat candidates for presidency,
candidates for president,
none of the baby killers are attending the America-Israel conference? PAC. They're
I
not
guess that's
attending
true. I heard something about
so
that.
You heard it because I told you last week. So if none of the Democrat candidates are attending the AIPAC conference for the first time in history, wouldn't that suggest that they're turning against Israel? They're boycotting it.
When you frame it that way, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, they never have before, and all the Republicans are going to it.
Again, I'm underinformed to see what the political strategy
Well, but
is.
I'm just curious. You think that if you elect a Democrat president and we keep going with Democrat policies, it'll be better for Israel than if you elect a Republican? You think Trump's been bad for Israel, but the Democrats that are boycotting AIPAC will be good for Israel?
You think Obama was the devil, so go ahead and tell me why Obama was bad for Israel.
Well, Obama arranged a deal with Iran to develop a nuclear...
Obama negotiated a deal that would...
allow Iran
that would stop them from developing...
No, it would actually allow them to develop a nuclear bomb within 10 years from the time they made the...
No, let's not have this argument.
Then why did you ask me?
All right, so I forgot what
and the Israelis begged us.
All right.
Netanyahu actually came to the Congress and said, "Look,
my
country could get nuked."
Our director's going. All right. So let's see. So, all right, who was the last Democratic president before Obama? Clinton.
Well, Carter has called Israel an apartheid state. You think Israel's apartheid? You just said you didn't think so.
Not really. No.
So Carter thinks it is.
Yeah, but
he wrote that in a book.
Okay, when and how? The guy's 96 years old.
He wrote that in a book that came out about 6 years ago.
I mean, you could make that argument. I wouldn't be convinced by that argument.
Well, my question to you is this: is it incomprehensible to you? Is it a bolt out of thin air that the Democrat Party
announce her. We had this argument twice already.
But
they didn't announce her specifically. They denounced hate speech of all kinds. We already had this fucking argument.
Because you can't accept it. You can't accept that your party did not denounce Omar. You still think they did.
I said they did. I just said they didn't denounce her specifically.
Well, then they didn't denounce her, Rick.
Okay.
Why didn't they?
Because she's a member of their party.
Well, so now the Democrat Party is accepting of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel.
They denounced all hate speech. So you got
They denounced all hate speech.
All right, but so fucking Tucker Carlson here. Everything gets spun in the way that is most favorable to Republicans. But far be it for me to talk about frickin' like end times evangelical Republicans who support Israel because it brings the book of Revelations closer to fruition. Now you find that ridiculous.
No, I find it incredible that how brainwashed you are. That in your mind,
so your arguments aren't brainwashing.
You asked me a question. You asked me a question. You want me to answer?
Okay, fine.
Okay, so you're telling me that there's actually a justification to be anti-Israel because these crazy Christians.
That's not how I framed it, but there is this weird thing.
Yeah.
And
you buy that, huh, Rick? You think that because crazy people are supporting Israel, hey, you're kind of against those Christians that are doing that, huh, Rick? So actually supporting Israel is kind of a crazy thing. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Well, what if these... but my point is, you set yourself against people that support Israel. You think it's funny what their reasoning is. But the whole point is, you're anti-Israel.
I'm not.
Well, then, if these people are supporting Israel, why don't you leave them the fuck alone?
Well, because you're going to bring up this fucking NPR story as if it's propaganda, as if it's just pure propaganda.
Yeah, NPR would never do left-wing propaganda. That's incomprehensible to you.
They lean left, but I bet you part of being a social justice warrior is being conscientious and trying to do a good job and
trying to get fertilizer into PLO territory so they can make explosives. Good idea, Rick.
No, you take one little thing.
All they're going to do is grow these delightful mushrooms that you can put in your salad.
Earlier, just to segue, just a different topic.
We have to change topics because our
but
director thinks
you mentioned Obama, and it's interesting. There is a lawsuit in Texas where Obamacare is being challenged, and it's likely to go up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is kind of conservative right now, and Trump is now saying that the Republicans will be the party of health care.
All right, to reiterate, in case you can't hear this, our director is saying that Trump wants to completely get rid of Obamacare. He says that the Republicans will, in the future, be known as the party of health care. Which is, in my media, my liberal media that brainwashes me, has been greeted with a certain amount of skepticism in that the Republicans have yet to present any kind of comprehensive health care plan as far as I know. Now maybe your media tells you there's this plan. Is there a Republican health care plan?
I don't know what they're cooking up. I'm sure if they say they're going to, they will.
Because, I mean, they tried to repeal Obamacare more than 70 times.
Okay.
And each time...
Did it work? Did Obamacare work?
All right, so, I mean, we can argue about the details of Obamacare, but here are the 2 points that I would make. More people are covered now under Obamacare, plus every other fucking system there is, than were covered before Obamacare, to the tune of roughly 20 million more Americans, though there are roughly, 30 million Americans who are without health care. Also, and this gets argued over a lot, the rate at which the cost of medical insurance premiums increase has slowed down considerably under Obamacare, where it used to go up. I don't know the numbers, but it's not great now, but it was much worse before Obamacare. Also, in favor, the thing you hated the most about Obamacare, I believe, was the individual mandate. You'd have to pay a fine if you didn't have coverage.
Yeah.
And Trump got rid of that, right?
Right.
All right. So, does that make Obamacare better that that mandate has gone away? The thing you hated the most about it has gone away?
All I remember was that I was forced against my will to buy this expensive plan that I didn't want, and it was expensive to me because it was 2 months of rent, and I wish I didn't have to do that.
Did you use your insurance then?
I have since then almost made some of my money back because I went to the doctor a couple of times. You know what, guys? I'm not that interested in this subject.
Okay.
You go ahead. I'm sure the Republicans will come up with something, and when the Republicans have something more developed, then we'll have more to
But they've had so long. They've been trying to repeal Obamacare. When did Obamacare kick in?
2009.
All right, 10 years. Almost 10 years. So, and the Republicans haven't come up with anything in 10 years. All right, so let's move on.
Obama. Do you think that Obama was aware of the unmasking, all the things, all the shenanigans? And if so,
Well,
if in fact there was Russian intervention, why wasn't Obama? I'm curious. Why do you feel about that? Do you think?
Wait, are we talking about the fucking dossier again?
Just everything in general, in terms, if there was stuff going on, if there was Russia intervention, it was under the Obama administration. What did he do to prevent it? So, just your comment on that. And if he was he aware of the dossier? Do you think he was aware? Or?
Not specifically of the dossier. He was definitely aware. And again, you're talking to a guy who's only like 55% informed about anything. But I do know the story that a bunch of federal spy agencies said Russia is fucking with the election. And Obama wanted to take it to the American people. And he took it to the Gang of Eight. And some members of the Gang of Eight said, no, you can't do that. That if you do, we will call it partisan election meddling. So he shut up about it. The main reason being, the main reason that everybody shut up about it, though it was talked about, but it wasn't topic number one. There were other topics that were. The reason that nobody made a bigger deal about it, at least on the Democrat side, is that everybody assumed that Hillary would win anyway, right?
All right. Well, this is. I do have some thoughts on this.
Can you do it without talking about the fucking dossier again?
Well, I'm not sure where we're going. What I found out this week is fascinating. Two of the reporters that first started to talk about the dossier in their media, they were reporters, now believe that Trump was innocent of everything. And here's the reason. It turns out that Roger Stone, for those of you that don't know, Roger Stone is an associate of Trump. He's like a friend or somebody he's met or whatever. And the Mueller Commission actually went after him. They've indicted him. And the reason that they indicted Mueller, or they indicted Roger Stone, it turns out, is because Stone was tasked to go to WikiLeaks to find out what the Russians knew about Clinton, what dirt they may have on Clinton, what they may have hacked from Clinton. Now,
tasked by the Trump campaign?
Possibly, yeah. Or he offered it or whatever. He offered to be a go-between. Now, somehow they turned that into a crime, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that if Trump was... The reporters that first broke the story about the dossier have come up with this very good point that it gets lost.
That if Trump was working with the Russians, he wouldn't have had to send Stone to find out what the Russians had.
Excellent. You finally justified that IQ of yours.
All right, so let me give further background on Roger Stone. Roger Stone is...
Well, wait a minute. Could you respond to what I just said?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a good theory, except it ignores the point that that there are a lot of lunatics involved in the whole frickin' thing. With lunatic number one being Roger, I mean, of all of them, the craziest person, the most loony person, is Roger Stone.
Well, that's irrelevant to my point.
No, but it's all right. I'm going to say it's a good argument to make. Though I also will say, let's wait and see. But Roger Stone is a guy who has a tattoo of Nixon in the middle of his back. He's a self-promoter. He's a dandy. He dresses super fancy, which is it's not against the law. He's a swinger. He's a goofy guy. All that's ad hominem, but like he's a guy who has prided himself on being a dirty political trickster over the decades. So it's a good argument, but Roger Stone, my mom might call him a flibberdigit, which is like an old-timey term for a guy who...
Rick, you're not going anywhere with this.
Roger Stone's a fucking lunatic, so who knows fucking what Roger Stone will get up to.
But Mueller's indicted him for this. It's very real.
Okay. So that's a good argument. The defense will have a good argument saying, why would... What we just said. We don't have to say it again.
Well, but that's the first
thing. That's not game, set, match. It's fucking Roger Stone.
Well, it has nothing to do with Roger Stone. They're just saying, why would Trump need a go-between to find out what the Russians are doing if they're his buddies? The second question is this. Another argument against obstruction of justice, and I do have more to say, so please don't respond for a minute. I'm going to make 2 points. The first is that it turns out that obstruction of justice is the second thing that Trump was accused of. Mm-hmm. But you can't be accused of obstruction of justice if you didn't commit a crime. So in other words, since the Mueller report is absolutely unequivocal on one point, that Trump did not collude with Russia, then trying to obstruct justice on something you didn't do is not illegal.
Yeah, that people disagree. You hate when I bring in stories from my personal life.
Well, I'm not done with I have one more point to make.
Well, can I respond to that point with a dumb story from my personal life?
All right.
When I was a little kid, down in Albuquerque for the summer, visiting my dad and my stepmom, my brother and my sister and I, we would be super bored, because it's fucking Albuquerque, and we would stuff clothes full of newspapers so it looked like a body. And we would throw it out in front of cars to make people think they hit somebody. We thought, I mean, it was pretty amateurish. I don't think anybody actually thought it. But say the driver, say this, somehow this gets investigated, and the driver lies to the FBI about, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't looking at my phone, I wasn't doing this. That's still obstruction of justice, even though there's no underlying crime, because he only ran over some clothes stuff with newspapers.
Actually, no, it isn't. If there's no crime, you can't obstruct justice.
I think people disagree about that.
Well, okay. I'm getting my statement from two things. If you read the summary of the Mueller report by Barr, he says it's very, very. I realize it's very, very. It's in the 3-page summary, and it's in legalese. But basically, what he's saying is that if, among other things that Barr says, one of the reasons he can't indict Trump for obstruction of justice is that he's been exonerated of colluding with Russia.
Does Mueller say that? We haven't seen the report yet.
Well, Mueller says that he didn't collude with Russia. So if he didn't collude with Russia, Barr is saying, I can't indict someone for obstructing justice for something that you didn't do, for a crime that never occurred. And also, Rand Paul says this, who is, he's what he is. The third thing I wanted to say is that Lindsey Graham has made an excellent point, and he's head of the Senate, I believe, Intelligence Committee. And he says that we're going to investigate the investigators for a very good reason. And that is, if Trump didn't collude with Russia and the dossier isn't verified and it's not real, and Bruce Orr knew it wasn't real, who was the fourth in the Justice Department, and Comey knew it wasn't verified.
There's a difference between wasn't verified and wasn't real.
No, but the point is that you can't. They now find that Christopher Steele got some of his information just from the internet. He was just reading like blogs where people were saying things that they were just speculating.
Contrary to everybody's experience, there is some stuff on the internet that isn't 100% false.
No, but what he actually admitted to was that there were things that he put in that dossier that were just speculations from people that weren't even reporters. It was in the comments section. So there were people commenting on a blog that was so spurious that it doesn't exist anymore. And he thought, yeah, that comment sounds interesting. I'm going to put this in the report. He's admitted that. And Comey and Orr, that the FBI and the Justice Department both say that this isn't verified. So, before you interrupt me, okay, I know you're going to say that no, the dossier is true, but what Lindsey Graham is saying is, well then, if you had doubts about the dossier, then you can't go to the court and ask for a warrant to investigate Trump, because that's a very serious charge. You're talking about the candidate from the opposing party committing treason. So you have to have, this has to be completely ironclad before you get a warrant.
No, it doesn't have to be all right. So,
what branch of government does it fall under? The executive branch?
All right, but hold on.
But wait, there's more.
But so give me a chance to respond to that. Where first off, if you look at the timeline of the FBI and the people around Trump, now there were people around Trump being investigated long before, like Manafort, who'd been investigated off and on for years, as far as I know. The FBI was already sniffing around some of Trump's people before the dossier. Now, if somebody was going to do a dossier on me, of course they'd go to the internet. And there are some stories about me on the internet. You should Google me. And in the comments, in just about every set of comments after a story about me, there is, he's a loser, he's never done anything with his life, he's just been a bouncer, blah, blah, blah. So if you're doing a dossier, of course you'd include, scuttlebutt, this guy seems to have squandered his life on bullshit.
What you're saying, Rick, is that you're going to have to hire, spend $1 million on lawyer fees and stuff to protect yourself and your family, and others around you are going to be picked on as well, based on reports from the internet. Is that the country you want to live in? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if you're going to compile a
Because that's what was done. That's what you're saying.
thoroughgoing dossier, it's going to include. Now, I'm a math guy.
Well,
no, hold on.
I don't think the audience heard.
Oh, okay. The director
question.
said, "Do you want to live in a world where the bullshit things that people say about you on the internet are going to have to be defended by you to the tune of $1 million in lawyers?"
Well, hang on. He's got a point there because General Flynn actually was destroyed financially, and 3 or 4 other people defending themselves because they sort of misstated things in process crimes, being investigated over a dossier that turns out not to have been real. In other words, people made spurious accusations against Trump, and in this dossier, the FBI then used this false dossier to entrap half a dozen, Flynn, and a few other people, Papadopoulos, and actually
they were
broke
all
these.
found guilty of a bunch of stuff.
But they were process crimes. They got dates wrong. They misspoke. They said
they weren't just Trump. Flynn was financially entangled with bullshit.
No, that's not why he was ruined. The reason he was ruined was they accused him of saying something to the FBI that wasn't true when the FBI entrapped him in the very beginning.
Why did he say shit to the FBI that wasn't true? It's not just because he got dates wrong.
What happened was the FBI called up Flynn when he was just taking office. He was just moving in. He had just got into the White House, and he gets this call from the FBI. He did not know he was being investigated. And so they called him up. They said, "Hey, can we come over and talk with you?" And he said, "Sure. I'm the new acting security or something advisor, some top position in security for Trump, for the country." And they just called him up out of the blue, and he was the new head of this department, a very national security, I think.
How long did he last in that position?
Well, he just moved in. It was just weeks after the inauguration.
Well, could that have been part of the insurance policy?
Well, now hang on. And so the FBI call him up and they say, "We'd like to come over and ask you some questions." Now, a normal person would have, you getting a call from the FBI, you think, "Well, Christ, I'm going to need a lawyer." But they didn't tell him that he was under any kind of suspicion. He just thought that it was one department wanting to talk with him. He thought it was normal government business.
Why is he lying in the...
Okay, so what happened was they came over and they asked him some questions because they had been, because of the dossier was used to get warrants so they could tap everybody's phones. And they found out that Flynn was talking with the Russian ambassador. Okay?
Which before he would have any kind of official government position.
At some point during the transition. No, it is allowed. You are allowed to. In fact, he was doing his job as head of national security. Yeah. Talking to the Russian ambassador was part of the job.
Well, he was dirty and underway.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was. Like what's her name from the Justice Department. From Obama's Justice Department, went over to Trump's people and said, you shouldn't hire this guy, that he's dirty. What's her name? Who got?
But that doesn't mean anything, Rick. They didn't like Flynn because he opposed some of Obama's plans.
He'd been fired once.
He had opposed some of Obama's plans. Yeah, but he didn't
the
agree.
Department of Justice didn't care about
Obama. You just told me something about Flynn, and I have an answer for it. Flynn was not a good, he wasn't loyal to Obama when he was a general. He said, I disagree with some of the things you're doing, Obama. So they hated him. Now the point is that he was talking with the ambassador to Russia about nothing. This was not illegal for him to be doing that. But the FBI caught him in misrepresenting something about it. I don't remember the exact thing. He may have said to them, "No, I didn't talk with the ambassador, But at that time, he didn't know he was under investigation. He thought he was talking with his equals, people from another department, and he may have thought it's none of their business. He may have thought, they don't have any right to know what I'm doing because I'm higher up than they are. They were just regular FBI agents, and he was the head of the whole national security department.
I don't know.
So what I'm trying to say is, this dossier was used to put that man in jail. It's almost destroyed the Trump presidency, except he's so much more badass than you people are that they couldn't stop it. But the point is that Lindsey Graham is now asking, well, if Bruce Orr and Jim Comey knew that the dossier wasn't verified, then why did Loretta
didn't just fall off the fucking turnip truck? They know that shit like this is not 100% verified.
Well, no, Bruce.
It's not the first dossier in history to ever be issued.
No, but Rick actually, Bruce Orr actually went to the FBI and went to the Justice Department and said, look, this dossier, I am in contact with Christopher Steele. I know him. I've spoken with him. I've had many meetings with him. Do not trust this dossier. He hates Trump. That is the verbatim word of Bruce Orr.
To who?
To the people in the FBI and to the Justice Department. He told all of them. He said, don't trust this dossier. I'm in contact with the man that wrote it. His wife worked with Fusion GPS.
Now you're just throwing everything at it.
Wait. I need to finish. Every time I try to finish my sentence, you say...
this is fucking Lance versus Rick. We yell at each other.
Could you just let me make my point about Lindsey Graham?
Okay.
So for a half hour, I've been trying to tell you that Lindsey Graham says we need to find out exactly why this investigation started, because we now know that Obama's Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, is it Loretta? Yeah. I always mix up her with the head of the IRS.
Loretta.
So Loretta Lynch was aware of all of what was going on. And we need to know where it started, because now we're in the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General would have told Obama. Obama would have known at the very beginning that we're going to start investigating your rival, Trump. So what I'm saying is we're making our way into the Oval Office now.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, go ahead. Do a Benghazi on this deal. Obama was semi-famously checked out. Trump wasn't his rival. He wasn't running. Obama famously said, I don't have to run for president again. Now, but let me tell you how I'd fix the dossier, being a math guy. I'd do it like a weather forecast. If I were Steele, I'd be like, look, I'm just a guy gathering stories and information and what I hear and what I see, and I'd put all the stuff like, I'd divide it into topics by how strongly I felt they might be true. I'd put this based on my experience and what I've heard and my research. I'd put everything here. It was 35 pages, the dossier, right? Something like that. I'd say that these 8 topics or stories or whatever, I would estimate, though I'm just a guy putting together a fucking dossier, I'd estimate each of these to have an 80% likelihood of being true. And then I'd go to 60% and 40%. And then, at the end I'd be like, these 11, 12 topics, including the P tape and all that shit, I'd say, I've heard this stuff. I have no particular reason to think that I've just heard this stuff. I don't feel strongly that it will turn out to be true, but I'm including it to be exhaustive. And because, that's what I assume that's what the dossier, if I were putting together a dossier, or if I had commissioned a dossier, that's what I'd want to know. I'd want to know what's out there.
30 seconds.
And yeah, Rick,
we're out of time?
It's going to pause.
Okay, we'll get a break in a second.
Yeah.
Is this halfway through?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, just that
Wrap it up.